Hey guys, it's Lewis from Recycle Bicycle Sales here. In today's video, we want to compare a road bike with a gravel bike. Which one should you buy? Well, first things first, what's the difference between a road bike and a gravel bike? Well, as the name would state, a road bike, you spend more time on the road, and a gravel bike, you spend more time on the gravel. Aside from the obvious, when we look across at a gravel bike, you'll find that they usually have quite large tires and lots of tire clearance, so you can go even bigger again, so that you've got good grip when you're off-road and a bit more puncture protection. Whereas on these road bikes, there's usually a little bit less tire clearance because you only have to run relatively narrow tires in comparison to these gravel bikes. You usually won't find them much wider than about 30 millimeters. I've got a couple of different tires here. The gravel tires, you can see that they've got these little knobs on the side. So they're gonna give you good grip when you're really leaning the bike across to the side. Not only that, they're also quite a bit wider. So you won't find them much less than maybe 35 millimeters in width. So they're quite a wide tire. Whereas on these road tires, they're a little bit more slick. So they're just a faster rolling. The puncture protection that you need on a road bike is maybe a little bit different to what you'd find on a gravel bike. So just a faster rolling, high performance tire is what you'll find on a racing road bike. Expanding a little bit further on the tires, both of these can be set up tubeless, but from my experience with gravel bike riders, I see about 50 or 60% of people choosing to go for the tubeless option, whereas on road bikes, it's only about 10. The benefits of going tubeless on a gravel bike, you'll have better puncture protection and more compliance when you're riding along. So the bumps in the trail or the road that you're riding on aren't too gnarly for you. Also, because the tires are run at a slightly lower PSI, because now we've got more volume on these larger tires, it means that it's going to be a lot more comfortable as well for you. So when you're riding along on these gravel roads that are made up of a bunch of sticks and stones, it doesn't feel quite as bumpy. So not only are they going to be a better rolling tire off-road, they're also going to be a lot more compliant. I guess what I'm saying is these tires here on the gravel bike are just able to handle so much more abuse. As you're riding along, you might find yourself going through sticks and stones and then across on some mud and then going on some bitumen and sort of all over the place. And these ones can handle all of it, whereas the road bikes will kind of argue with you if there's a pothole in front of you that they have to ride over. Some of the size options that you'll find will vary between these two types of bike. On the road bike, it's usually somewhere between a 23 millimeter tire and a 32 millimeter tire. So a pretty standard road bike size. Whereas on these gravel bikes, we sort of go from 35 up from there. Next key difference would be the drivetrain. When we're looking at a road bike, most of the time we'll have two chainrings on the front and then however many we have on the back. It might be a 10 speed, an 11 speed, or even a 12 speed. That's the number of cogs that we have on the back. So we've got quite a large gear ratio so that we can go up steep hills really slowly and then we can pedal back down on the other side. On gravel bikes, a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time, we'll find just a single chainring on the front, like this option has here. It's more of an adventure type of gravel bike. So single chainring on the front, and then we've got 11 different cogs on the back. So they've got 11 different gears that they can pick from. And this bike here has 22 different gears that they can pick from. They've got 2 times as many gears. So a slightly smaller number of gears, but often on the gravel bike, we'll have an even larger cassette at the back. So the gear ratio is still relatively similar. Your easiest gear is really easy and your hardest gear is really hard. On this specific example here, they don't have a massive gear ratio. This is set up more for racing. A note that I just want to make here as well is that on road bikes, a really common upgrade that people want to try and get is to move up to electric gears. So you've just got little buttons instead of levers up at the shifters there. Whereas on the gravel bikes, some people definitely choose to go to electric gears, but I think as a percentage of the market, there's probably less people that want to upgrade to the electric gears on these gravel bikes, because a lot of people using these gravel bikes are doing long bike packing adventures and they want to be able to fix it on the side of the road. If there's an electrical fault in their drivetrain and they're halfway across the Nullarbor over in Western Australia, like, man, you're just not going to fix that on the side of the road. Whereas if you just had a normal cable, a normal mechanical gear, you might be able to bring it back to life on the side of the road. We can even talk a little bit about geometry between these two different bikes. They are both bicycles, so they both will ride like a bike. But if we wanted to get a little bit more specific talking about geometry, we'll find that these gravel bikes usually have a slightly slacker head angle, which means that the fork is raked out and pointed a little bit further forward, which is going to make it more compliant when you're zigzagging between trees and going over little bumps in the trail. So a slacker fork angle, and sometimes they'll even have a steeper seat tube, which means that the saddle will be sort of a little bit further forward, will help you get your body weight further forward on the bike. Although gravel bikes and road bikes can share similar frame materials, sometimes there's a little bit of a difference. Both of these examples that we have here at the moment are made of carbon fiber. So they're a nice lightweight sort of performance-based material. A common thing that you find on gravel bikes is that sometimes they're even made of steel. Steel is significantly heavier, but it has different characteristics to it, which will suit different types of bike rider. For example, if you're doing a really long bike ride and you've got your tent and your food and your water and your this and that and lots of weight sitting on the bike, more than just your body weight, you want to make sure that the frame can handle that extra weight. So that's where a steel frame will often come in. Whereas if you're doing a cyclocross race, like I would imagine this bike probably does, that's exactly where the lightweight carbon fiber material and the relatively smaller gear ratio comes into it. So different types of bike, which leads me perfectly into the next point, which is categories. Across on road bikes, we'll find a few different categories and they're usually suited for different types of races. That tends to be the way that the road bikes are designed for the races most of the time. This one here is a Cervelo R5, which is the Cervelo super lightweight bike. It's designed to get up the hill as fast as it can because it's nice and lightweight, but they also make an aerodynamic, fast racing sort of bike as well. And then they make a third option, which is their endurance style of bike. It's got bigger tires, relaxed geometry, the carbon's softer, this kind of thing. So different categories of road bike. You can also get a time trial or a triathlon bike as well, if we want to get specific. But the road bikes tend to have those three main categories. Whereas gravel bikes have a lot more variation in categories. I don't think I can even bring it back to a specific number. This one here, I would call it a cyclocross bike. I think the way that I describe categories to most people when they're looking at new bikes is that in gravel, it's a bit of a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, you can look at a super lightweight, cross-country, sprinting into the finish line, chucking the bike over your shoulder, that sort of bike. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, we can look at what I would call a touring bike. A touring bike will usually have a big, strong steel frame, room for lots of bolts all throughout the frame so you can put extra water bottles and extra bags and carry extra things. It's usually got massive tires and maybe the brakes are a cable disc brake instead of a hydraulic disc brake. It's a very, build it yourself, fix it yourself while you're out riding kind of bike. So there's so many different options within that category, but that's kind of the extreme ends of each different category. Of all the different categories that you could find on this spectrum, I think the most common one that I see is smack bang in the middle. I'd call it an adventure bike. An adventure bike is a really good blend of the two different types of your lightweight, going fast kind of bike, but also your bike packing and getting lost for a couple of days sort of bike. So it's made of a relatively lightweight material, could be aluminium, might be one of the expensive ones made of carbon fiber. It's also got lots of different mounting points and relatively wide tires so it can handle all the different gravel roads that you're going to take it on. These adventure bikes are designed perfectly for exactly as the name states, going outside and having an adventure. The final key difference that I want to talk about between road and gravel bikes is the speed difference. A lot of the time you'll find that on a gravel bike, if you're riding along next to your friend that's on a racing road bike, you're probably putting out a little bit more effort than them. And the reason for that could be something as simple as having the larger tire means that we've got more friction on the actual road. We've got more surface area touching the road, which means that you have to push a little bit harder. As well as that, the bike might also weigh a little bit more than what the racing road bike does. So maybe you're having to put out a little bit more effort than what your mate does next to you. If I had to take a guess, I reckon that riding a gravel bike on the road is probably about 25% harder than a road bike. It's not the end of the world, but it does mean that you're gonna have to work that little bit harder. Okay, let's get down to it. Who should buy what? Well, who should buy a road bike? I think the people that are looking to buy a road bike are the people that are looking to get into their local racing scene. Maybe they want to join some clubs or some, fundraiser events, or maybe there's a group ride that they want to come on from the local bike shop and they're doing mostly road bike riding. That's kind of the person that's going to use a road bike. They're not necessarily a fan of getting covered in mud, for example, or maybe they think that it's a bit safer riding on the road rather than the off-road. They're a very specific tool that's designed to go fast on the road. I would almost compare this back to cars a little bit and say that a road bike is kind of like buying a Ferrari. It's a really fast bike to use on the road, but you wouldn't really want to take it off-road if you could avoid it. Although I'm sure there's people that take their Ferraris off-road, but Ferrari is a supercar, it's an on-road car. Same with a road bike. It's a super bike, it's designed to be on-road, I suppose. So who should actually be buying a gravel bike? If you're the sort of person that wants to get away from cars so you can get off-road a little bit, or maybe you want to go for a ride through the forest and through the trees, or cut some laps across the footy oval or something like that, you might be the perfect person that's looking to get a gravel bike. Gravel bike riders are the sort of people that might have grown up with a mountain bike throughout their childhood, and maybe they just want to relive those days of being able to go off-road again. They want to go out when the sun goes up and they don't know when they're going to come home. They just want to go and ride their bike all day. You might be a gravel bike rider. These gravel bikes are a little bit more comparable to like a Subaru, like a WRX. Yes, they can be driven on road quite comfortably as a road bike could, just as a Ferrari could. Whereas when you go off-road, having that all-wheel drive system will make it a little bit easier and a little bit safer to drive off-road. So that's kind of what a gravel bike is like. Okay, so let's say you're in the bike shop and you haven't fully decided exactly which one you want to go for, and you still can't decide yet. Could you use one to do the other activity? Short answer is yes. It's going to be easier to use a gravel bike on the road than what it would be to use a road bike on the gravel though. And I'm speaking mostly because of the tyre clearance and I suppose the strength of the frame. Yes, you could put bigger tyres onto a road bike, so you could go onto some gravel roads, maybe some light gravel roads. You wouldn't want to go doing any, jumps and that kind of thing just yet. Whereas with a gravel bike, and this is a really, really common one that I see people doing, is they'll buy a gravel bike and it will look like this. It will look like a gravel bike. But then while they're in the bike shop, they'll buy a second wheel set that they can put skinny road bike tyres on. So they can have the benefit of using a road bike, as in using it on the road, the skinny tyres. But then if they want to go off-road and get covered in mud one day, they can move it across and put the other wheels back on with the grippy off-road tyres. So a gravel bike is a little bit more versatile if you wanted to try and blend the two. But yes, you could use them both for the other activity a little bit. Saying that, it would be worth noting as well that you probably don't want to use a rim brake road bike on the gravel roads. If you were to get a bit of mud or a bit of dirt onto the braking track of the wheel where the brake pad actually touches, it's going to act like a lubricant on the brake, which is worst case scenario. And then you'll be using the trees to stop you instead of the brakes. To touch on the topic of price, gravel bikes and road bikes are usually a little bit different. I think to get a good road bike, you want to be able, or in the pre-owned market at least, because that's where we work, I'd say to get a road bike, you want to spend at least $1,000. To get a gravel bike, I think you probably want to spend at least $2,000. That just seems to be the way that they're going. I think part of my thinking behind that is that brands and manufacturers have been making road bikes ever since forever. They're really good at it. There's lots of different types, there's different colors that they've released, there's new technology that's always coming out, they're working out how to make them cheaper, all this sort of amazing stuff. Whereas gravel bikes, someone can tell me in the comment section if I'm wrong, but I think I only really started seeing gravel bikes come onto the market in about 2020, so early COVID days. I know that lots of manufacturers would have been making gravel bikes before then, but I think they started becoming a little bit more mainstream around then. So with 5 years or 4 or 5 years of research and development into making gravel bikes, I think brands are pricing them a little bit higher because they're still learning a little bit. So I guess that kind of explains that they're usually a little bit more expensive, but you can make it feel like 2 bikes, so kind of makes sense and it's a good idea anyway. But these 2 bikes that I've got sitting here in front of me, to give you a bit of an example, this bike we have listed at $4,000 and it has Ultegra Di2, Shimano, carbon wheels, carbon frame. It's a very comparable bike at $4,000 to what this Cervelo R5 CX is, which would sell for probably closer to about $6,000. It also has the carbon frame, the carbon wheels, the electric gears, but it's also a slightly newer bike, so it will probably fetch a little bit more money. But to change your view on this, if you did buy a gravel bike, you actually can ride it on the road pretty well. So it's kind of like you bought 2 bikes for one. So if you girl maths it out, you kind of won. You got 2 bikes for the price of one. And to tell a quick, somewhat personal story about why I think the gravel bikes are epic, I reckon I've had my best experience and my most fun riding a bike when I was using my gravel bike. I've got a gravel bike, I'll put a picture up here, where I went for an overnight bikepacking trek with a friend of mine and we rode 150 kilometers out that way to the Riverland, and then we slept there, and then 150 k's back. And I remember it was the hardest day, or days, plural, I had on a bike. I remember I was covered in sunburn, and then later in the ride, it started raining. And then as we came back to the city, it started hailing. And I remember I experienced all of these different weather systems in one bike ride because we were out there for so long, but it didn't dampen the bike ride at all, pun unintended. It just was such a fun experience out there riding with my friend, and we both struggled with the bike ride. We both, it got really difficult, but we're both out there just doing it. We're setting up our camp at night and we finally got to our final destination, and it's just some of the best memories I've got on my bike. And I've got lots of photos from the trip as well. So I think a gravel bike is awesome because you can just literally go missing for a few days and then come back, which I think is pretty fun. It's like camping. You can literally go camping on a bike instead of with a car. So I like camping. Hopefully this video gives you a bit of a summary about the difference between a road bike and a gravel bike. Hopefully it gives you a bit of an understanding as to which one you should be buying as well. If you reckon there's anything that we've missed, maybe you've already got a gravel bike or you've already got a road bike and thinking about getting a gravel bike, let us know in the comment section below. I love hearing all that stuff.